Hi, welcome to another episode of Hot Takes. The SNP are so desperate to keep this argument about gender identity going that, they want to keep pushing the idea that men can be women if they want to, that they're resorting to actually lying. They are saying that, we've got to do this, we've got to push this, we've got to let men into female areas, into female safe spaces, into female changing rooms, female toilets and so forth, because that's what the trans guidance policy says. And that's the problem. It's only policy. It's not law. Law trumps policy. You can bring in any policy you like, but if it breaks the law, it's breaking the law and there's nothing you can do. And so as they push this and say, oh yes, but look, he's a man, but he can go into a lady's toilet. No, he can't. And who says? It's not my opinion, It's the law. Now, you're going to say, oh, but David, you're going to say, we have this thing, the Gender Act, the Equality Act only talks about sex. But what is sex? Is it biological sex? There's questions. No, there isn't, you see. There isn't. Sex is immutable. Sex is a thing. Gender is what they're trying to push because they can't push sex. And it doesn't talk about gender in the Equality Act. It talks directly about sex. But what we're here talking about now isn't even the Equality Act. The Equality Act is 2010. We're going back 18 years. We're going back all the way to the end of the 20th century, going to the late 1900s. That's how old this is. I heard some young teens talk about the late 1900s, and I felt like I was an ancient old man. I mean, I very nearly am. But it's the first time I realised, oh God, is that what they're talking about? The 1900s, in the same way as I would talk about the 1800s. Anyway, 1992 we're going to. Now, this is obviously related to the Sandy Peggy case going on in Fife against Dr. Beth Upton, the strange man who thinks he's allowed to change in women's changing rooms. Now, he's got to lose the case because the law is clear. The law says that you mustn't, you can't. What law? Well, it's the Workplace brackets Health and Safety and Welfare close brackets Regulations 1992. Now, that's a bit of a long title, but buried deep in its machinations, it states that there must be separate toilets and changing rooms for males and females. Not for men who pretend to be women, not for the gender type stroke, anything. It's quite specifically male and female. There's no question about gender ID. And of course, that's a problem. And this is the one law that they don't want to mention. They mention all sorts of things. Oh, we have guidance. We have regulations. We have opinions from very learned people. What they don't mention, though, is the 1992 Workplace Act. Now, what is a workplace? Well, it's where people work or where any work can be done. Now, that does include anything other than your own home. You think you go to a school, it's a school, but it's also a workplace. You go anywhere, obviously, in a factory or anything like that, obviously in a bar. Does somebody work in that bar? Yes, it's a workplace. Hospital, it's a workplace. And so forth. You can argue just about anywhere really is a workplace outside your home. And so, this is problematic. But they, rather than talk about that, and rather than sort of saying, yes, the law is exactly that, the law is that we must provide women-only spaces, they ignore it and say, well, the guidelines. Well, screw the guidelines. They have a thing that they've brought in called the Transgender Policy LGBT plus, because there's too many other letters, Trans and Non-Binary Equality and Inclusion Policy. That trans staff should choose to use the facilities they feel comfortable with. Well, no. Trans staff should use the facilities to which they are entitled to use, i.e. if they're biologically male, the men's, and if they're not, the women's. And I note as well that the Yes, make sure I got the right letters. The LGB lot want to remove LGB from LGBT. They say, no, we are not the same, you know, because LGB is all about attraction. After that, it's mental health. They don't want to be associated. It's grand, isn't it? Hey ho, it's like putting a Frenchman and a Uruguayan in a room and say, oh, you two will get on together, you're both foreign. Well, there we go. But the law is the law, and it doesn't matter how many times they talk about policy or guidance or try to push this envelope. There ain't no pushing. Stick to the law. We're just waiting to see, obviously, the Sandy Peggy case. If she quotes the the workplace health and safety, well, the case is already over, isn't it? Because it's a non-starter. You can't argue with legislation that's been on the books nearly 33 years now. Yeah, third of a century. The late 1900s. God, I feel ancient. But there we go. So, whatever your feelings, whatever the feelings of anyone who wants to use them, they're immaterial. There is no policy that overwrites the law. It doesn't matter what your employer says. If your employer says, oh, well, we want to make it acceptable for men who pretend to be women to use the women's facilities, you can say, you can bring in any policy you like, but attempt to bring that in and enforce it, and I will sue you for breach of this law for endangering me. Now, there was a case, I can't remember, was it Devon recently, where a woman was photographed by a man in a woman's place. He said, but I'm a lady. And they couldn't prosecute him for being in there for a lady. They did get him for photographing, like that, the photography, and he's being prosecuted for it. But the fact is that this is going to happen, and it's going to happen a lot. And wait until it's your daughter. And then go, well, it's far too late then, isn't it? But wait until it's your daughter being subjected to this by some weird man who insists on exposing himself to young girls in girls' toilets, ladies' toilets. What will you think then? It'll all be far too late. But these people want to look virtuous. But I genuinely think that encouraging the molestation or sexual abuse of children is not a good look, John Swinney. I think you should really be moving away from it, especially you, mate. A party filled with people who have previously touched up other people's children, eh? Not good. Still, you pick them, you keep voting them in. It's what you get, isn't it? But just remember this, all you SNP voters. Look to your daughter. Do you want a grown man exposing himself in front of her? Probably not, I'd like to think. Let me know what you think. Thanks very much. Bye.